Hello everyone, this is Aussie Elect and welcome back to the channel. Today we are discussing finally the 2025 Western Australian state election, which is happening in less than a month on 8th of March 2025. This is a second term Labor government looking for a third term. Last election there was a massive wipeout of the opposition. The Labor Party ended up winning 70-30 on the two-party preferred, won almost 60% on the primary vote, and the National Party became the official opposition with 4 seats. The Liberal Party moved to the crossbench on 2 seats. Since then, there has been a defection. There was actually a by-election in the seat of Northwest Central. That was won by the Nationals, but then that member later defected to the Liberals. But then, plot twist, that seat was then abolished. If we go down, it was these 2 seats were combined, Moore and Northwest Central, into Mid-West. The Nationals are now on 3 seats and the Liberal Party on 2 seats. This is what the map currently looks like. As you can see, there's a lot of red and not a lot of blue and green. The Liberals managed to hold on to Cottesloe, right in sort of the heart of sort of the wealthy areas of Perth, and then they also held on to Vass, which is sort of like a regional seat, which resides amongst the federal seat of Forest. As you probably know, the Labor Party also did pretty well at the latest federal election, not quite as well as the state election in Western Australia. The popularity of the then Premier Mark McGowan was seen as a very good reason why the federal Labor Party did so well. McGowan has since then resigned as Premier, and he was replaced by Roger Cook. The guy currently leading the Nationals had the seat of Moore, but is now contesting Mid-West, as again, his seat was combined with another seat to create Mid-West. And then the Liberal leader, one of the only 2 MPs elected at the last state election, is the member for Vass. I might get a lot of pronunciations wrong in this video. People already called me out a lot for my mispronunciations in my most previous video. I still don't know how to pronounce Pran and Corio. I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't say I am overly familiar with Western Australian politics, so I will be taking a lot of data from the Aeforecasts website to help in my predictions. I'll also be sort of comparing things to the federal electorates, which I know a little bit more about, and some data that we have of them to see where things might be going. So the polls have predicted about a 15% swing, 14 to 15% swing. The last 2 polls had Labor on 56-44 of the two-party preferred, their primary vote over 40, the Liberals just over 30, the Nationals between 3 and 4, the Greens over 10%, which is a fair bit better than last election, and then One Nation hovering around 3 or 4%. Western Australia, out of all the states and territories, tends to have the least sort of micro-party or independence representation. Before Kate Cheney, I don't remember the last time an independent won in Western Australia. For some reason, it doesn't attract these sort of minor party characters like, Victorian Socialists or like Nick Xenophon or all the people in Queensland. Northern Territory has a bunch of independents. Tasmania has Jackie Lambie. ACT has these Teal independents in both the Senate and now in their territory parliament as well. New South Wales got a bunch of independents elected at both the last state election and last federal election. Western Australia tends to be sort of more entrenched, I feel, with the major parties. And there is a bit of a support for the Greens there too, which we'll get into what chances they might have as well. It seems to be that there's probably going to be about a 14 or 15% swing, sort of returning to the norm after that massive blowout last time for the Labor Party. Aeforecasts is predicting about a 16% swing, the two-party preferred returning to a 54-46 level. I guess they just assume that the polls are going to narrow before the election. They still think the Labor Party is going to get over 40%. the Liberals over 30. They think the Greens are probably going to not quite do as well as how they're polling, which is fair enough. That's what happened last time. And they think the Nationals are going to outdo their polling by a little bit. And as you can see, they still think that Labour will win a comfortable majority of about 6 seats, and the Liberals will take back their place as the official opposition. If we look at the kind of margins it's expecting that the Liberals and Nationals will be able to pick up seats, it extends way down here to about 18%. So he's expecting sort of like a 16% sort of like statewide swing, but he's thinking that it will take the Liberals and Nationals up to being able to win seats with about an 18% margin. So I assume he thinks that like maybe the swing won't be as hard in some sort of like safer Labour seats, but the swing will be on in some more sort of marginal seats. I mean, like, let's look at like Jandakot with how he thinks things are going to go. So yeah, he thinks that like in this seat that the Liberals are going to actually get something like a 19% swing because he has them on like 51% as an average. But if we were to sort of just look at polls, we would see that the Liberals and Nationals would probably only win up to about Darling range, it seems. So Aeforecasts is giving them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more seats than the polls are suggesting. I think maybe the result will be somewhere in the middle. I should also mention there's a couple of seats which are sort of like a Nationals versus Liberal battle as well. Geraldton is probably the most even, but we have the Nationals ahead. There's also the same sort of case in Warren Blackwood and Midwest, but it's more in the Nationals' favour, as well as Roe. But then we've got like Albany and Kalgoorlie, where the Liberals are the favourite out of the two. And then we've got like a genuine freeway contest here in Pilbara, where the Liberals have the least out of the three. And then we have Fremantle, where he's giving the Greens a 13% chance of winning. Fremantle is the only seat which has sort of like a significant Greens chance. There's also like Maylands here on like a 6% chance. So if the Greens think that this site's predictions hold any water, then Fremantle is the seat that they should be working hardest to win the most. So if we give all of the seats favoured by Aeforecasts to their respective winner, this is what the map will look like. As you can see, the Labour Party in a clear majority. Pilbara, according to this site, is such a like a undefinitive three-way contest that I literally just had to leave it blank. I didn't really know, based on the site, who I should give it to. Like Labour Party had like the plurality of like the percentage chance, but if I looked at like the two-party preferreds in a contest against either the Liberals or the Nationals, Labour lose by like 51-49. So I really didn't know who to give it to. Interestingly, Kimberley maintains for the Labour Party. It's the only real sort of like regional seat to do so, unless you count like Collie Preston and Bunbury or Mandurah. But when it comes to the city, you see sort of like a pattern here that you can also see in the federal electorates, where you sort of have like the seat of Curtin, very wealthy area, then you got the seat of Moore up here, kind of conservative, also quite wealthy, and then also Tangney. So the Liberals in the state will be able to claw back a bunch of these seats in areas where they are like somewhat strong. If we are to take away the seats that the polls are pointing to that the Liberals and Nationals won't be able to make up the margin for, we have to get rid of Bicton here, and then we also have to get rid of Kingsley. We have to get rid of Murray Wellington, Jandakot here, and Pilbara will stay with the Labour Party. So I think the result will probably be sort of somewhere in the middle of these. Labour keeping 40 seats would be a very good result for them. But I want to quickly take a look at this little map again of like economic stress federal electorates. And as you can see here, the places which are having the most problems are the places where some of these sort of like could they not win seats are located up here in Pierce, like Northern, Perth, and Cowan directly north of the CBD, and Swan directly south of the CBD. I should just mention here is the Swan River, and it's sort of the landmark that makes a difference in ideology between people in Fremantle and Cottesloe. As I said earlier, the Fremantle could go to the Greens. So given that information, Liberals will likely pick up Kingsley, and I think Jandakot, something like that, and maybe they won't pick up Murray Wellington, although if we go down to the area which is Forest, way down here, there is a fair bit of economic stress as well. So I think, yeah, probably the result will be something like this. Just an editor's note, a seat that I think is more likely to go to the Liberals than Jandakot is Bicton. It has a smaller margin. Also, down here, I marked the wrong seat, so I was actually meant to mark Murray Wellington, not Collie Preston. Anyway, rest of the video has a bit of a slightly different map, but it's the same number of seats. I don't know how well the Greens are going to do in Fremantle. They didn't do well in that sort of inner city by-election in Victoria. If there's a sentiment that's similar in WA, I doubt that they'll do quite well in Fremantle. Some of these seats like Geraldton will come down to sort of like a referendum on how well the Nationals have done as the official opposition. I am not familiar enough with WA politics to really gauge opinion on that. Either way, the Nationals will not continue to be the official opposition after this election. They will be on the crossbench yet again. I just want to mention quickly that the Labor Party actually start with one extra seat. They only won 53 seats last election, and as you saw at the start of this map, they had 54. Oakford is a brand new seat, and it is a notional Labor seat, and they don't look like they're going to be losing that one. Another close seat is Hillary's in the north of Perth, but Aeforecasts believes that the Labor Party will hold on by about a 2.5% margin. But yeah, the Nationals are polling between 3 and 6%, and like what they get between that amount is basically going mean if they're going to pick up seats like Geraldton, but it more has a reflection on how well they will do in the upper house, which we will get onto now. So here's my prediction, but before I get into why I'm predicting this, I want to talk about reform to the upper house. So last election, there was regions very similar to Victoria. I believe they also had group voting tickets as well. And the regions were mal-appointed, where the regions had more seats than they deserved proportionally. So the Labor government, with their massive majority, with both the lower house and the upper house, they actually had 22 seats out of 35 in the upper house. So they had a majority in the upper house too, which is quite rare. They decided that they're going to completely reform this upper house into being one giant constituency that elects all of their members, every electorate, for all 35 seats. That means that there is a quota to receive a seat of 2.77%, which I believe is the lowest quota in the country. So it makes it quite easy for minor parties to win seats. And here I've got that the shooters will win one, legalized cannabis will win one, One Nation will win one. And I believe this last seat will probably be won by the Christians. But there is a few sort of tidbits here I want to get into. 15% assumes that Labor will get about 40 to 42%. 12 seats here assumes that the Liberal Party will get over about 30%. The Nationals assumes that they'll get over 4%, maybe 4.5% is what they'll need to get 2 seats, which is a little bit dicey. I think One Nation and legalized cannabis will be safe. Legalized cannabis has become the like ultimate protest vote. Six News were saying they could get up to 3 seats. I don't think that's happening. One Nation are polling about 4%, so I think they'll get a seat. The shooters did pretty well last time on the primary vote. So did the Christians. And I think they'll do a bit better this time because a lot of people just voted one Labor last election. They were just so confident in the Labor government. and I think the Labour vote will probably splatter everywhere and go to some other minor parties. Greens are polling like they'll get 4 seats, but I think they'll only get 3 if they don't do as well as they're polled. The other contender, I think, is the Libertarian Party. They have rebranded since the last election. They were still called the Liberal Democrats last election. I think they've done a lot of work to try to build their brand since the last state election in Western Australia, as well as other parts of the country. No idea how well they're going to do, and I don't really know who they would take a seat off of. Maybe the Nationals or maybe Greens, if they actually were able to get a seat. This actually has every listed party running in the upper house. The only, except for one, and if you want to see what the name of that party is, you can go onto the WA Register of Parties. I did not want to sort of allude to that party name on this chart here. It's a pretty interesting party name, and I don't think they're going to win a seat. They were previously the Democratic Labour Party, but had to change their name because of new laws brought in, which stopped parties having the same or like similar names to established parties. But this will be a perfectly fine upper house for the Labour Party. They'll have a majority with the Greens. If the Greens fail to win another seat, they've got legalized cannabis as sort of like a lefty backup, but then they've got all this other crossbench to sort of work with as well. I doubt that the Liberals and Nationals will do better than 14 combined seats. I think that's sort of like their peak, and they might not even get that. Not as good of an election for Labour as last election, but the Labour Party will still do pretty well. That most recent news poll showed that despite a lot of people's discontent with the federal Labour Party, they're still pretty happy to re-elect the state Labour Party. They do view them as different entities. Of course, there probably has been some drag from the federal Labour Party on the state Labour Party. And of course, the state Labour Party is probably helping the federal Labour Party as well. It's sort of like a symbiosis thing. But it will be interesting to see how this state election will go, and it will help me to make a more accurate prediction on how federal Labour will go in WA. Tangney is still a big question. Bullwinkle is still a big question. Curtin is still a big question for that independent. I don't think we'll be able to really get too much insight about how that will go from the state election, but if there's like a big swing to the Liberals in Cottesloe and around that area, then maybe we can see a sort of more confidence in sort of the Liberal brand or something. And then more with David Goodenough, again, it's a bit hard to gauge that kind of stuff. But again, if there's like a big jump on the Liberal primary vote, then maybe we can see the Liberal brand is doing quite well in those areas. So that's the video, everyone. Thank you very much for watching. I wanted to get someone on board on this video who knew a little bit more about WA politics, or at least ask them a few more questions. Unfortunately, I couldn't get anyone, but I hope that I have given enough insight to make this video valuable to y'all. Goodbye, everyone. Oh, by the way, if there does end up being some more polling before the state election, I will do another prediction video. I mean, if things like substantially change. So see you then if that happens. Bye bye.